In this tutorial, we're going to look at budgeting to a monthly cycle. We will start by looking at why we recommend budgeting to a monthly cycle. And now that we have both your income and your expenses, we're going to go through the process of converting these to a monthly figure. Okay, let's start with one of the most common questions we get asked at Grandma's Jars. Why do you recommend budgeting to a monthly cycle when most people get paid weekly or fortnightly? Well, there are three really good reasons. The first one is most bills and loan repayments come as multiples of months. Now, in some cases, you can ask to pay them weekly or fortnightly, but on the whole, most bills occur monthly, quarterly, or annually. And given you have way more individual expenses than you do income transactions, it makes sense to budget around the expenses rather than the income. The second reason is that many people find themselves stuck in a paycheck to paycheck cycle where it's a struggle just to survive from one pay to the next. Our experience is that budgeting to your pay cycle only reinforces this problem, whereas budgeting to a monthly cycle takes your focus off payday and helps you look at the bigger picture. At Grandma's Jars, one of our first goals is to get you to the point that it doesn't matter what day you get paid because there is always enough money in your accounts to pay the bills as and when they turn up. One of the things I love to hear as a budget coach is when my clients have lost track of which week is pay week. This comes as an exciting revelation to them because in the past they had been desperately hanging out for their next payday, but now it just doesn't matter. I get so excited for them because this is the first sign that they have turned a corner financially. The third and perhaps the most important reason we budget to a monthly cycle is that at the end of each month, we reconcile your budget with your bank account. This is a really important process because it ensures that your budget never strays too far from the reality of your bank accounts. We need to know that if your budget says you have $1,000 to spend on holidays or $200 to spend on grooming, that this is backed up by real money in the bank. This is an awesome process because at the end of some very basic calculations, you will know to the dollar what your surplus or deficit is. This process typically takes 15 to 20 minutes to complete, which means it's too time consuming to complete on a weekly basis. And the reality is, weekly is far too frequent, and fortnights are far too easy to lose track of. So our experience is that the end of a month is the perfect place to complete this reconciliation process. Hopefully I've convinced you that budgeting to a monthly cycle makes much more sense. Now let's have a look at the process of converting your income and your expenses to a monthly figure. We did touch on this in tutorial 2 when we looked at your income, but now I want to discuss it in more detail. Firstly, it is important to understand that with the exception of February, 2 fortnights do not equal 1 month. There is an extra 2 to 3 days per month, which equate to 2 extra fortnights per year. The same goes for weekly. 4 weeks do not equal 1 month either. With the exception of February, there are 2 to 3 extra days per month, which add up to 4 extra weeks per year. This is why we don't have 48 weeks per year. We actually have 52 weeks per year. I say all of this because when I'm budgeting with people and when I sit down and have a discussion with people, if I ask them how many weeks they think are in a month, they would typically say 4, or how many fortnights there are in a month, they typically say 2. So it's important to understand that those extra 2 or 3 days each month make a big difference in the overall scheme of budgeting to a monthly cycle. If you've budgeted for 4 weekly rents or 2 fortnightly mortgage payments in a month, it can be a budget-breaking experience when a 5-week or 3 fortnight month arrives. Let's have a look now at the principles for converting any number to an average monthly figure. The first step is to convert the weekly or fortnightly figure to an annual figure. So if you have a weekly figure, you need to times it by 52 to make it an annual figure. And if it's a fortnightly figure, you times it by 26 to make it an annual figure. The second step then is to divide this annual figure by 12 to give you an average monthly figure. This is a formula you should use when converting your expenses to a monthly figure. As I've mentioned earlier, if you're using the Grandma's Jars app, it will do this conversion for you as you add each expense to the system. Let's put some numbers to it. If my rent is $1,000 a fortnight, the first step is to convert this to an annual figure. There are 26 fortnights in a year, so I multiply the $1,000 per fortnight rent by 26 to give me an annual figure of $26,000. Step 2 is then to convert this annual figure to an average monthly figure. To do this, I divide the $26,000 by 12, which gives me an average monthly rent figure of $2,166. This is the amount I need to set aside each month to ensure that the money is always sitting there ready to pay my rent as and when it turns up. Let's have a look at converting weekly to monthly. If I earn $1,000 a week, I first multiply it by 52 to make it an annual figure. This equates to $52,000. And then we divide it by 12 to give an average monthly income of $4,333. I am hoping this calculation makes a lot of sense. Now, as I mentioned earlier in this tutorial, budgeting to a monthly cycle can create a couple of problems if you're not prepared. Let's have a look now at what can happen when I budget to an average monthly income. Let's say I earn $1,000 per fortnight. If I use the average monthly calculation, this would equate to an average monthly income of $2,166. However, let's look at how my income works in reality. In month 1, I receive 2 fortnightly pays of $1,000, which equates to $2,000, not $2,166. In fact, for 5 months, January through to May, I would only receive 2 pays or $2,000 per month. Now, if I'd been budgeting to my average monthly income of $2,166, my budget will have been going backwards by $166 a month, and by the 5th month, I am in the red by $833. This can be really stressful if you don't know what's going on. But then suddenly, in month 6, I have 3 pays because my fortnightly paydays fell on, say, the 1st, the 15th, and the 29th of the month. This extra pay means I receive $3,000 for the month, which completely erases the deficit. So while I do receive $2,166 on average, it's not how it pans out in reality. As long as I'm aware of this, I can easily plan for it, and it doesn't need to be a problem. In our Grandma's Jars application, you'll notice that at the bottom of the income page on the main application, we have a little graph that shows you when your extra pay months will occur. You just need to make sure that as you're adding your income to the budget, you are entering the correct date of your next pay. 1 or 2 days out can make all the difference. As we discussed in tutorial 2, we recommend that when possible, you budget to your minimum monthly income. This ensures your budget will never go into deficit, and that when those extra pays do come, they are an absolute bonus. And after all, who doesn't like an extra pay? But when it comes to expenses, however, you should always budget to the average monthly figure. If we look at a slightly different version of the slide I used a minute ago, let's say my mortgage payments are $1,000 per fortnight. This means that 5 months my payments will be $2,000 per month, and then in the 6th month I will have to pay $3,000. Unless I am prepared for this, my finances can get very ugly very quickly. By budgeting to the average monthly mortgage figure, I would be allocating $2,166 to my mortgage jar each month. Now most months, my total mortgage repayments would only be $2,000, which means I am accumulating $166 per month. That is until I get to the 6th month, and in the 6th month, I will have accumulated the $1,000 extra that I need to cover the third mortgage payment. No stress, no sweat, the money is sitting there ready to go. So where possible, base your budget on the minimum monthly income, but always use the average monthly calculation for your expenses. Okay, so in summary, we have looked at 3 reasons why we recommend you budget to a monthly cycle. We have looked at the process for converting your weekly or fortnightly figures to an average monthly figure, and we have discussed the things you need to look out for when budgeting to a monthly cycle. Your homework. Now, if you have registered for the Grandma's Jars application, go through and complete steps 4 and 5 of the setup phase. These are the steps where you enter your income and your expenses. As you enter each expense, notice how it automatically converts it to an average monthly expense figure.